Thank you very much for being here this morning. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to have a wide and varied audience, and I know people will be coming and going through the day. We hope that if you are so inclined, you will stay for as much of the day as your time permits. And I hope that you'll go away today with fuller understanding of not only the project that is behind the symposium, but also how it connects to other public humanities work that other scholars are doing in Africa. So what I would like to do is begin this morning by saying a little bit about the background of the project that is behind the symposium. We've come to dub the project MCLAKI, which is an acronym for Maseno University, Cleveland State University, and Kisumu, which is the third largest city in Kenya and the location of Maseno. And this sort of encapsulates the intensive collaboration that exists around this effort to curate the city of Kisumu. First, I'd like to give a little bit of background, as I said, about MCLAKI. And it goes back to a project called Curatescape, which developed here at CSU in the Center for Public History and Digital Humanities, and is a web and mobile publishing platform built on a content management system that originated at George Mason University in the Center for History and New Media called Omeka. And what we have done with Curatescape is we've added themes and plugins, which to the non-digital, sort of non-digitally savvy is a fancy way of really talking about how these different tools interact. And together we call this Curatescape. But it's more than, it's not just really a platform, it's more really a process that we've evolved here. And it originated with a mobile app developed also here in 2010 and 2011 called Cleveland Historical, which you can access at clevelandhistorical.org. The idea behind Cleveland Historical, or behind Curatescape rather, was to take this place-based app that takes multiple media and uses it to curate places in the city to tell collectively a broader story about Cleveland and its environs, and to generalize what we were doing with Cleveland Historical to other communities and other areas. And so what we set out to do was to create a code base that was largely the same, except for a particular look and feel and branding that could be extensible and adjustable to each new project partner who worked with us. Through a CSU Faculty and Research Development Grant in 2010 and a National Endowment for the Humanities Office of Digital Humanities Startup Grant in 2011, we obtained seed funding for the development of what became known as Curatescape. Cleveland State University also generously invested in this project, and we went about setting up a revolving fund which would allow us to license the software to organizations wanting a low-cost solution for doing the same kind of thing we were doing here in Cleveland. And so it basically operates as a simple cost recovery kind of model in which a modest amount of funding then accrues back to the university in the form of an indirect cost. And it largely keeps the project going. So it's really a nonprofit enterprise, to say the least. Early partners adopted this framework called Curatescape for their own projects in 2011 and 12. They included Eastern Washington University for a project called Spokane Historical, Baltimore Heritage Incorporated in Baltimore, which did a project called Baltimore Heritage, and the University of New Orleans, which launched a project called New Orleans Historical. What we found was that we were able to create a largely self-sustaining project that now includes more than 30 projects worldwide on 4 continents, hosted by institutions ranging in size from the tiny town of Mount Pleasant, South Carolina Historical Commission, all the way up to the Smithsonian Institution. So it's a wide range indeed. This again created a sort of a family of projects. that have allowed communities around the country and now also around the world to curate their communities and reach out to and engage their own audiences, to create a greater sense of place and to call awareness to the need for preserving the places that make a city or a town or a community or a region a place that people know and understand and embrace. Cleveland Historical and the other apps that followed have played that kind of role. And I have a couple of images on this slide that show some of those community linkages and events that encourage people to explore their city and to see it through new eyes. So there was a bike ride in Raleigh, North Carolina that made use of one of our apps, and Cleveland Historical did walking tours in the Gordon Square neighborhood as well as many others in partnership with some local neighborhood organizations. So by excavating the rich history of local places and connecting these place-specific stories to broader trends locally, regionally, and nationally, I think these apps embody an important educational and civic value. In Cleveland alone, we've involved dozens of community partners in the city and its suburbs who have an interest in uncovering and then making manifest this history to a wide audience. So where does McClakey derive from all of this? The power of this project, I think, is again in bringing a low-cost, robust medium that's within the range or within the reach of most modest-sized organizations and institutions. McClakey represented a desire on our part to examine whether Curatescape might be adapted to the so-called developing world, where there exist different scales of what is accessible to the public. Along the way, we had to consider a different technological landscape. Kenyans have been very enthusiastic adopters of technology. I don't think we have to say too much to convince you of that. Kenyans invented mobile money transfer, M-Pesa, they call it, and there are many others that have followed on the continent and beyond. Kenyans have leapfrogged the PC era, PCs and laptops and so on, straight to the mobile age. In 2014, for the first time, more than 50% of Kenyans purchased, or more than 50% of Kenyans who purchased new phones were purchasing smartphones for the first time. But the flip side of this is that 50% of the money that people in East Africa spent on their cell phones was spent just on charging them. So electricity is expensive, and we take this for granted in the United States, but owning a mobile phone and maintaining a mobile phone are two very different things. It's kind of like owning a car in a way, but it's a very steep slope to scale to maintain such a small device. It's so expensive. People who live off the grid, so to speak, pay a princely sum for their mobile phone ownership. Connectivity is spotty at times. Service, as I said, is also expensive, and the average mobile device is less powerful in terms of processing speed than that sold typically in the United States. Our content, therefore, in such a project must load easily and affordably, and we must allow users to opt in to get media that are more data consumptive. I observed firsthand on a recent trip to Kenya the challenges that go along with doing a project like this. As we sat together in a classroom and tried to add materials to McClakey, we found that the download speeds ran at about 10% to 30% of what we were accustomed to in our homes and offices here in the United States. So there is, even when the students were not on campus yet, we found that there was already a real drag on the efficiency of doing basic tasks online. So while, again, enthusiastic adoption on the one hand, great expense, and sometimes frustration with the spottiness or the slowness of service on the other. Beyond basic technological concerns, we also had to develop a plan for developing the capacity to run CurateScape at Maseno University. Not just building something for Maseno, but building something at and with Maseno. The technological challenges are very real, but it's similarly challenging, I think, just to gain access to basic things that, again, we take for granted as scholars and as students in the United States. We know that archives sometimes have a reputation for being places that they have gatekeepers, and you have to sometimes work with those gatekeepers and persuade and massage them toward letting you use materials or guiding you to things that they know about. In Kenya sometimes, and it's true of much of the world, just accessing primary sources is a challenge. There are distances to be covered to get to archives. There are archives whose doors are shut to everyone unless you're someone quote unquote important. And so these are things that students in Kenya encounter. The expense and difficulty of accessing the kinds of materials that are in abundance in Cleveland. For our project in Cleveland, just in our own library, we have 500,000 images in the Cleveland Press collection alone. And Bill Barrow and Lynn Byko and company are very gracious in opening those materials to our students. And I think sometimes that our students are showered with an abundance of materials for their projects, and they don't often appreciate that this is indeed very rare on a world scale to have such ready access, even in the digital age. We are in a special place for that, where we stand here. So we also, in addition to overcoming these sorts of difficulties, we needed to find ways to combine the strengths from our own institutions and find out what strengths each could bring to such a project. No collaboration succeeds without identifying such strengths and finding out how they pair toward an appropriate goal. So it's beyond issues like finances, though those are important. We also look to the strengths of our Kenyan partners who bring to the project great expertise, lived experience, even more importantly, and an embrace of something that they see as transformative for not only their university and their city, but indeed their region. Along the way, I think we've all learned a lot about content strategy, public engagement, and we're starting to learn something about project sustainability. That's really more important than building a project is sustaining it. And sustaining it in the developing world is an added challenge where money is not always flowing as fast as we might like to see. We also have the distinct advantage of scholars with expertise in African history, and two are pictured here and are in this room with us today. Gordon Obote Magaga and his colleagues, from whom you will hear, and who's pictured at the right, and Meshach Owino, Professor Owino from here at Cleveland State, who have really done a lot of the intricate work of making an educational exchange work, and really stretching beyond the bounds of what they already were doing in their classrooms with their students to incorporate an entirely new component that frankly is not easy to implement. It's not easy in a classroom here in Cleveland to implement. There's a lot of micromanaging that goes into keeping students on track with a project such as this, but to do it across an ocean with a 7 to 8 hour time lag or time gap with students from very different backgrounds makes for an added challenge. To collaborate with people with whom you have never spoken personally, never met, is all the harder. So I think, I would just say I've been blown away by the tremendous work that our Maseno colleagues have done, and that Dr. Owino has done in bring this project really to where it is the public humanities, I would say, draw their lifeblood from this type of intensive collaboration, not just in the developing world, but anywhere in the world, but maybe especially in this setting. The public humanities are not practiced in isolation always, though they can be, but they're best practiced in collaboration with others. They're not only an opportunity for scholars to reach out to the public, rather, I think when they're practiced in collaboration, whether between two or more faculty, between multiple students across institutions, and even oceans apart, they derive an extra strength. I think in public humanities scholarship, therefore, it's not an exaggeration to say that 1 + 1 does not equal 2. 1 + 1 can equal 20, it can equal 200, or 2,000. Choose your number. But there is a multiplier effect. There's not always that multiplier effect in business, I think, as is often stated. They're often talking about multiplier effects, but I have seen a multiplier effect with this type of work. While we've been fortunate to obtain federal grant funding through the NEH for the project so far, we also know that large infusions of money are not the only thing and not even the most important thing that sustain a project. Rather, it's the commitment of the partners and their institutions to seeing a project really go to its fullest extent, and that takes something beyond the short range into the longer term. With that, I want to take just a couple of moments to show this project. I'm not close enough to the mic. Thank you, Paul. I drifted away from the microphone and didn't even realize it, so my apologies. It's hard to stay so close to the mic. McClakey is right now in web form. We are investigating how best to make it mobile. It is already mobile in the sense that it's mobile responsive. It's on the web. The question is, does it need native apps? I'm not going to say a lot about that because I think Aaron Bell will say more. But McClakey is much like Cleveland Historical in its conception. It has an interactive map with pins, each of which connects to a story. That has a set of coordinates and various media associated with it. So there's a narrative that's interpretive but not encyclopedic. There are images that have captions and credits, which are an opportunity for further curation. So this is the Kisumu Railroad Monument that marks the spot where the Kenya-Uganda Railway arrived in Kisumu, which was then named Port Florence in the early 1900s, that really connected the inland of Africa at Lake Victoria with the coast at Mombasa. And although I'm not going to play audio clips, we're going to be adding audio clips based on interviews with people in and around Kisumu. So over time, you can expect more of that sort of thing as well. So to begin to wrap up, the things I want to really emphasize are goals and where we think we're going next, and then allow my colleagues to add their thoughts on those things. For one, we are looking to create a robust and sustainable project that's centered at our partner institution, Maseno University, one that'll further elevate the stature of the university as a regional leader in the digital humanities and help it engage more broadly across not only Kenya, but we think around the Lake Victoria Basin and maybe into other sections of East Africa, maybe even beyond. So scale is not certain yet, but we expect to scale up nonetheless. Number two, we want to create a compelling and rigorous, but also accessible online resource for rich humanities content about the third largest city in Kenya. One that is produced in tandem between students from our respective universities. And again, the intense collaboration, I think, is really what makes this more special than just the technology alone. Number three, we want to create a mobile experience, whether on a native app or a web app or some hybrid, that responds to how Kenyans use their mobile phones and what they need and expect from a project such as ours. This will entail finding, and we're already working on this, of course, under the current grant, identifying a set of best practices and creating plans and a prototype for what we would build under an implementation grant from NEH, hopefully. Number four, we want to build partnerships. We want to move beyond simply two universities working together to having Maseno reach out and establish partnerships locally, as we've done from here at Cleveland State. But that's work that can't be accomplished from Cleveland State. That's work that happens on the ground in Kenya. We can assist with that and encourage and facilitate, but ultimately it will be the interactions, face-to-face interactions between community stakeholders in Kenya, and specifically Kisumu, that gets this ball rolling. Some possibilities include the Lake Victoria Basin Commission, which has oversight over the entire lake region and is concerned with environmental and resource preservation. The Kisumu County Tourism Board, the Kisumu Museum, just to name a few possibilities for collaboration. Also other county level departments. Just as the partnerships here in Cleveland have driven, I think, a richer project, have made this not just something that is beaming out from the ivory tower, but something that brings scholars out of the ivory tower and into conversation with the broader community. I think that is what you're going to see happening more and more in Maseno and in Kisumu. And it all happens around this idea of digital storytelling, which we're encouraging. Number five, we want to build a culture that's conducive to faculty and student exchanges between our respective universities. CSU and Maseno are in many ways similar. Both are medium-sized public universities in metropolitan areas of regional importance in our respective nations. We are similar in many ways. Budgets may be different, but there are many more similarities than there are differences, and I'm struck by those similarities. Number six, we want to build a model. I think it almost goes without saying that we wouldn't be doing this project if it were just a one-off kind of thing. This is something that's part of an ongoing, larger effort to identify how we can make a really transformative action happen. Thus far, I think we've started to refine a model for collaboration and for collaborative student research, which has resulted in the stories that you can already access at mccleakey.org. But there's much more to come, not only at Maseno, but we hope more broadly. And almost finally, I'll say number seven, building a network of projects. That goes to the idea of scaling up. So we're looking at how we could build a model for aggregating multiple projects across East Africa in a manner that allows each place, like Maseno, to have its own space and brand, its own identity, but also contribute to a wider repository of place-based content that draws institutions together in some way. So imagine landing at a mobile site, perhaps called Curating East Africa. Definitely a provisional title. It certainly could be something different. It probably doesn't prompt you to download native apps necessarily, because it is simply and elegantly designed to work responsively on a wide range of mobile devices, perhaps simply on an HTML5 standard. On it, McCleakey is joined by some combination of similar projects, perhaps also built through university partnerships modeled on our own and facilitated by us. It's, however, I think important for Maseno to stand at the center of this work and for our own partnership to be recognized in the midst of scaling up. We would not want to lose the special partnership that we've developed and the centrality of that work as it stands at Maseno as it scales up. Finally, number 8, we want to build civic engagement. We have an Office of Civic Engagement at Cleveland State University, as many of you well know. We also are the university that brands itself the place where engaged learning happens. We talk about engaged scholarship at CSU. And I think regardless of the precise direction we take in the implementation phase to come, we're convinced that this is a project that will continue to engage faculty and students, the broader community, in recognizing the importance of leveraging the power of place and understanding the past, building Maseno's digital humanities expertise and capacity, creating a strong, lasting bond between our two institutions, and finally providing a gathering place where people can reveal Kisumu's rich history, one new story at a time. Thanks very much.